to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. What is the latest as it pertains to two-division champion Teofimo Lopez, who says he has no fight lined up and he's still preparing for anything and anyone. The last we heard, he was supposed to be boxing Steve Claggett.
What happened?
Is he not going to fight that guy anymore? Realistically, Teofimo is only one fight away from his next big fight, his next big payday. If Devin Haney takes care of business this weekend the way we're all expecting him to, that is the natural fight to make, the fight between Devin and Teofimo. And to my knowledge, Devin doesn't have any arrangement with Golden Boy or any arrangement with DAZN that would impede him from going back to Top Rank and making another fight with them.
He can do it.
Now, if for some reason a fight between Devin and Teofimo can't be made, they can't come to an agreement, they can't agree on the money, whatever it is, Teofimo can revisit talks for a Subriel Matias fight.
He can do that. He said he wanted to fight that guy.
You know what he said? He recently said, "How many quote-unquote take-it-or-leave-it offers do I have to go through?" What a joke! Top Rank Boxing and Bob Arum.
He tagged him.
It seems like you can never make a fight for Teofimo Lopez without there being some kind of an issue, some kind of a problem, that there's always some drama centered around this kid in between fights when you're trying to make him one.
Drama before the fight, drama after the fight.
One of the more complex characters in the sport of boxing today, a kid who's definitely talented. He's definitely got talent, but he blows hot and cold, inside and outside of the ring. What seems to me to be a simple problem to an otherwise complex character, he's too big for his britches. He thinks he knows everything.
He doesn't trust the process.
And it's been this way ever since he beat Vasily Lomachenko. Monumental victory that may have been for him. That's more or less what derailed his career. He let it get to his head.
Without being too long-winded.
The pursuit of a little bit more money for a mandatory defense, it took too goddamn long. And Teofimo has no one to blame for that but himself.
He wanted big money for what wasn't a big fight. The George Kambosos fight.
Without being too long-winded, we know what happened. Teofimo lost far too much time on that, and it blew up in his face. Now, there appears to be some new situation happening in the background, and we know this much. Top Rank tried to put Jose Ramirez in the ring with Teofimo. They offered him $2 million or something like that. That's what the report stated. But Jose decided to go over to Golden Boy.
Fucked up the plans.
Both him and Arnold Barboza went over there to Golden Boy. And now Teofimo, at least momentarily, is stuck out there without a dance partner, or at least one with a profile, one we're familiar with. But like I said, he's really only one fight away from what could be his next major fight and his next big purse. He just needs to keep busy so he can keep sharp in the in-between time, not allow ring rust to collect. That's all it is.
How are you so sure?
Because all of these problems you see these fighters have, 9 times out of 10, they begin and end with what they expect to be paid. And a lot of the time, they want big money for what are not big fights.
Steve Claggett fight wouldn't be a big fight.
Teofimo said that he doesn't have an opponent lined up, but he also said they're giving him a take-it-or-leave-it offer. Take what?
Or leave what?
Teofimo fancies himself a bigger name and a bigger ticket seller than he actually is, and Matchroom's Eddie Hearn has highlighted that more than once. Teofimo didn't like it, but it's the truth. A part of the reason these young guys these days don't reach their full potential is because they're not active enough.
The focus has to be getting out there and getting out there often.
So when the Jose Ramirez fight falls through, you get a move on and line up the next guy, whoever it is. That it shouldn't take all these months to line up a Steve Claggett fight.
Fight with a guy like that.
For a Steve Claggett, why don't you put him in there with Ishmael Barroso? That makes for a great fight. Ishmael has validated himself. He knocked O'Hara Davies' block off.
Fight him.
Just a suggestion. When I look at Teofimo Lopez, I just feel like he's his own worst enemy. He gets in his own way. He's talented, plenty talented, and he's got quite the personality. He knows how to draw attention to himself, good and bad.
But sometimes you just need to shut the fuck up and fight.
Because you know what happens as the months in the calendar go by?
What?
And you're not fighting? You know what happens when you're not fighting?
What?
Other people are. Other cards get announced. You move into the background of people's minds and they start thinking and talking about somebody else. You're not indispensable to the sport.
Nobody is.
The old saying goes that the show must go on. And the show does go on. Look at what just got announced. The Matchroom versus Queensberry tournament. Better Beef versus Bivol. We still have Fury versus Usyk on the schedule. Lomachenko versus Kambosos on the schedule. Navarrete versus Berenchik on the schedule. And you're still trying to figure out who you're gonna fight?
You say they gave you a take it or leave it offer? Take it.
You are grossly misinformed about what bargaining power you have. Losing time doesn't cost Top Rank anything, but it costs you everything. It has in the past, and it could again if you don't wise the fuck up, get out there, and do your fucking job.
If they're not promoting your fight, they'll promote somebody else's. They're already starting to ramp up promotion for young Abdullah Mason. Abdullah!
They're already on the hunt for Jared Anderson's next opponent.
And he just fought.
Bob Arum took to his social media and stated, "We're looking for a heavyweight who thinks he can actually beat Jared Anderson. We need someone brave enough to get in the ring with Jared and give him a real battle. There's no one he would be reluctant to fight at this point on the heels of that lackluster showing, that stinker where Riyad Murhi didn't do anything to try and win the fight so much as survive it, though at the same time, Jared's performance wasn't any more ambitious than his."
A new challenger has emerged who says he's willing to accept Bob Arum's challenge.
Buenas tardes, fanáticos del boxeo. Esto es un mensaje para Bob Arum. Bob Arum, si de verdad quieres probar a tu pupilo, a Anderson, pónmelo y te aseguro que va a ser una gran pelea, y va a ser una pesadilla para Anderson y para ti. Gracias, mi gente.
So there are two things that have my attention here. The first one is the obvious one, that Luis Ortiz would like to share the ring with Jared Anderson, even if it means he's got to cross over to the top-ranked side of things to do it. This is the same Luis Ortiz, whose team turned their nose up at an offer from Matchroom to Ortiz to face Anthony Joshua for 3 of the 4 major titles. This is the same guy.
So you weren't willing to cross over to DAZN for Anthony Joshua, but you're willing to now cross over to Top Rank for Jared Anderson.
For less money and no belts. I'm not against the fight, but it needs to be said that between now and then, something must have changed, because before, they didn't want to let you go to Matchroom and DAZN for a shot at 3 major titles and a whole lot of fucking money. They didn't want to let you do that.
To headline a show at Madison Square Garden, they fucked that up for you.
To fight a guy that Luis Ortiz called a pussy. Well, the pussy's team sent you an offer, and you didn't take it, so that years later you could beg Bob Arum to let you fight Jared Anderson for less money and no belts.
What happened?
You know what happened. What I've been telling you happened and has been happening for weeks, for months, that fighters are going to start to float away. As opportunities dry up on PBC Island and there's a scarcity of resources and fight dates for the fighters, they're not going to have a choice but to leave and go where the opportunities are, where the fight dates are.
The PBC at this point doesn't have a heavyweight stable. They don't have one. Wilder and Frankie Sanchez are now boxing in Saudi Arabia.
Luis Ortiz is begging Top Rank for a fight. God only knows where Andy Ruiz is, who beat Luis Ortiz in his last fight.
What happened to him?
PBC heavyweight stable has all but dissolved and scattered.
And they ain't got any young guys coming through. New blood.
Where Top Rank just signed a young guy, Ali Feliz, and they've got Richard Torres and Jared Anderson.
Luis Ortiz is begging for a fight.
So look, the pattern I see is that week by week and month by month, more fighters are leaving and popping up elsewhere. And if this trend keeps up, the PBC may be reduced to little more than booking agents for some fighters.
Whoever they still have active, actionable contracts on.
Because the stable is thinning out, and that much is obvious, and they're not signing new guys, young guys, to carry the banner into the next generation. So when that happens and you lose in the strength of the stable, you ain't got enough guys to where you even should have a broadcast deal. What you can do is loan your guys out to whoever can use them.
Use them for sparring or use them as opponents for another promoter who actually does have a broadcast deal, has some fighters that they're grooming and they need opponents.
You can use them for that. We haven't seen Luis Ortiz in over a year. We haven't seen him since he dropped a decision to Andy Ruiz, but under these circumstances and at his age, he's willing to step in and take on a young unbeaten up-and-comer in Jared Anderson. And I like it. I do like that fight.
Jared needs to start fighting familiar faces and guys who have at least challenged for an alphabet title. Luis Ortiz fits that bill.
He fought Deontay Wilder 2 times for what was the WBC title. He came up short both times.
We know.
This isn't even the first time this has happened. That what was a familiar face at the PBC crossed over to Top Rank in recent memory, looking for opportunities. Charles Martin.
He's a former champion.
Jared fought him. Jared beat him. He didn't look good doing it, but he did it.
Now it's Ortiz's turn.
Luis Ortiz, who is a taller and longer fighter than most of the fighters they usually put in there with Jared Anderson, I notice a pattern. They're always putting him in there with short, stumpy, stocky heavyweights who he has a height advantage on or a reach advantage on.
Jared is usually the bigger guy in the ring, but in a very general sense, Jared isn't all that big for today's heavyweight division. He's actually moderately sized.
Think about it. George Arias, Andrzej Rudenko, the last guy, Riyad Merhi. These are all very short heavyweights, small for the division. Jared is bigger than those guys, but in a very general sense, Jared isn't a big heavyweight. And if he is to one day challenge for an alphabet title and ready himself for that upper echelon of heavyweights, guys that usually stand in somewhere in between 6'5" and 6'8", he needs to fight bigger heavyweights.
Otto Wallin, Philippe Pagovic, Daniel Dubois, Joe Joyce. These are more physically imposing heavyweights than the heavyweights he's been fighting.
Luis Ortiz. He's a bigger guy than the average guy you see Jared in there with. He's a southpaw too. There's good experience in that.
He needs it.
My previous video, I talked about how Jared Anderson, I'm just not quite sure where he fits into the heavyweight picture of tomorrow. And the fact that he's got a ticker problem, that he doesn't seem all that inspired, all that ambitious, and this being a visceral kind of job, a visceral kind of profession, it has to come from within. You have to want to be there. You have to want to hurt the other guy.
If you don't, the other guy's gonna hurt you.
How he fought a safety-first fight against Riyad Merhi. Yeah, Riyad didn't take any chances, but Jared didn't either.
Sink or swim.
It's time to put Jared in a sink-or-swim situation. They can afford to lose him if they have to, because they just signed another young heavyweight. So if Jared doesn't want to do his job, someone else will.
Put him in there with Luis Ortiz, see how he does, and if he comes through it,
All right. And if he doesn't, broom him.
get rid of him.
All of his outside-of-the-ring shenanigans and run-ins with the law, his uninspiring performances in the ring, he's becoming a liability.
Put him in a sink or swim situation.
Elsewhere in the heavyweight division, the world is still reacting to the official news that Deontay Wilder has gone into business with Eddie Hearn, with Matchroom, what was his arch nemesis. Rick Glacier, Boxing Insider Rick Glacier, reacted to the news by saying, "And you LDBCers and Haymanites and Wilderettes attempted to tell me that Deontay Wilder was still with Al Heyman. That's absolutely false." This is very bad optics for them. Those content creators who went as far as calling Eddie Hearn a plantation owner, a slave master, that what was once a flagship fighter for Al Heyman's PBC has so elected to go into business with him, and how that reflects on the PBC.
Yeah.
What the hell is going on over there that Wilder went to Matchroom?
It's more like what isn't going on over there.
Think about it. Had Deontay Wilder elected to hold on to his grudge against Matchroom with both hands and stayed at the PBC, what on earth would they have had him doing right now? What? They had their chance to make the Andy Ruiz fight, and rumor has it they didn't have the money. They didn't have the money to satisfy the fighters.
The writing's been on the wall for a while now. Some people just refuse to read it.
I wondered how Deontay Wilder's core supporters may have been taking this news, that he's now in bed with Matchroom. And what I'm told is that they're not happy about it, and why would they be? They spent so much time propping up all these narratives, propping them up and talking down Matchroom. Talking down the DAZN platform. Matchroom is doing just fine. DAZN is doing just fine. They're even getting fight dates for what were PBC fighters.
Signing PBC fighters, signing what were Showtime fighters.
It's been a rough week for those guys when you think about it. I know they weren't happy to hear the news that Jared Ennis elected to sign to Matchroom, instead of going with the PBC. They were behind him for a while he was on Showtime. I don't think they're as excited about his career now.
No,
I don't think
no.
they're at all pleased to hear that now Wilder's gone into business with Eddie.
And these are the people you get your boxing news from.
Their problem is that nothing built on a lie can last. And most, if not everything they said about Matchroom and DAZN and Eddie Hearn, it was all lies. It was all bullshit. And now it's coming to a head.
Yep.
Piece by piece, day by day, week by week.
Month by month.
These are not boxing content creators per se when you pay attention. Boxing is the last thing on their minds. And for their lack of boxing knowledge, what they try to do is compensate by making it about anything but boxing because they don't know shit about boxing.
So they make it about tribalism, racism.
To galvanize their subscribers and elicit an emotional response to consume more of their content, watch more of their videos because they've been misled
Lied to.
by what are these false prophets for profit. They don't care what they put in a headline or what they post on a thumbnail. By the time you realize it's all bullshit, you've watched their videos and they've made their AdSense money.
These pseudo-civil rights leaders.
Freedom fighters, and some content creators who have bowed out of creating boxing content altogether because they can't keep up the lies. They can't keep up the narrative, which is growing increasingly hard to do as Deontay Wilder, of all people, goes into business with Matchroom.
What are you going to do now? Are you going to turn on him? Are you going to turn on Boots?
And what about Subriel? What about Subriel Matias? Is he on the shit list too?
Pretty soon you're going to run out of things to watch because we know you don't like Top Rank, but you also don't like Golden Boy, and you don't like Matchroom.
The PBC aren't doing anywhere near as many shows as they used to. They don't have Fox and Showtime, both giving them an annual budget.
That's done.
They've only done one show this entire calendar year. We are 4 months into the year of 2024, and they've only done one show.
There's a complete blackout this month. They're not doing any shows. Next month, you get Davis versus Frank Martin.
We'll see how many people buy that, as rumor has it. Only 30,000 people, or just under 30,000 people, bought the Zoo versus Fundora pay-per-view.
Way to kick off the Amazon deal.
What's even funnier is that Inui receives the promotion from Amazon in Japan that they pretend the PBC gets from Amazon here in America.
And you want him to come here.
What was supposed to be a big deal that the PBC's on Amazon now. Inui's been on Amazon for some time.
That's another story.
Nothing built on a lie can last. And for whatever reason, you chose to lie to your audience, maybe even lie to yourselves about what Al Heyman and his PBC really is, an abject fucking failure.
It's not over yet, though.
That ship hasn't sunk completely. It is limping on.
But for how much longer?
What else needs to be said? Fighters are jumping ship. And that's what I told you would happen.